Rome is burning. The year is 71 BC. The mighty republic is at war with itself. Slaves and gladiators have risen up in open revolt and are marching on the eternal city. At their head, the most feared man in Rome, Spartacus. The name alone strikes terror into the hearts of Romans. He's a demon from hell, they say, a curse, the scourge of Rome, a monster, and those who simply could not endure the cruelty of their Roman masters any longer. Soon, Spartacus was leading an army of over 70,000 men, the largest slave army in Roman history. All of them wanted nothing more than to overthrow their masters and build a new society based on equality and freedom. Spartacus promised them that and much more. How could he break a spirit that had already been broken? The Roman siege dragged on for months, and the losses mounted. Then came the turning point of the war. He accused his commanders of cowardice and threatened to have them put to death if they didn't do better next time. But deep down, he knew that this was not a battle he could win. Eventually, he was cornered and offered the chance to surrender. His revolt inspired other slaves to rise up and fight for their freedom. Rome might have won the battle, but Spartacus won the war. And that's why Rome could never silence his name, because history would never forget. Thank you for watching. And in doing so, he changed Rome forever. You see, before Spartacus, slaves in Rome had no rights. They were considered property, chattel to be bought and sold. But after his revolt, things changed. The Romans realized that they had to treat their slaves better if they didn't want another Spartacus on their hands. So they introduced reforms to improve the lives of slaves, at least some of them. They gave them the right to own property, to be able to buy their freedom, and even to marry. Of course, these reforms didn't go far enough. Slaves were still considered property, but at least they were treated a little bit better. But Spartacus refused. He fought to the death, killing 3 of his pursuers before finally succumbing to their blades. When his body was found, the Romans mutilated it, cutting off his limbs and throwing them into the river below the fortress where he had died. No part of his body was left whole, but Spartacus was not ready to surrender yet. Not by a long shot. He planned to regroup and strike back, but fate had other plans. While attempting to relieve the siege, Spartacus defeated 2 Roman legions and Crassus barely managed to escape with his life. This victory made Spartacus famous throughout Italy. People came from all over to join him, drawn to his charisma and determination. The rebels now numbered over 120,000 men. He told his followers that he would lead them to the mythical land of freedom in the east. But before he could do that, he had to deal with another enemy, Marcus Terentius Varro, who had been appointed to stop Spartacus once and for all. The two met at the Battle of the Silarus River in the north of Italy. It was here that Spartacus suffered his greatest defeat. Despite being outnumbered, the rebels fought bravely, but in the end, they were forced to flee. However, Varro was unable to pursue them, as his troops were exhausted. It didn't matter whether these lands actually existed or not. What mattered was that people believed they did. They believed in Spartacus. To Spartacus, these names mean nothing. He's not interested in praise or glory. All he wants is freedom. It was a trap set by the Roman general Varro, who had followed Spartacus in secret. As soon as the fighting started, Spartacus knew that he was in trouble. He tried to rally his men, but it was no use. They were being slaughtered. In the end, Spartacus was forced to flee on foot, leaving behind his weapons and his shield. But Rome was experiencing unrest too, and the Senate was desperate to put down this slave rebellion once and for all. So they turned to Rome's greatest general, Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was ruthless, ambitious, and already rich beyond his wildest dreams. For Crassus, putting down this slave revolt was a chance to make his fortune. The Senate rewarded him with money to raise an army, paid him a fixed sum for every rebel he killed, and gave him the right to confiscate the property of anyone who fell fighting for Spartacus. It was a chance for Crassus to get even richer, and he took full advantage. For Spartacus, it all started many years before. When he was merely a nameless Thracian slave, the property of a Roman aristocrat, Spartacus was outnumbered, outgunned, and without friends in high places. But then the impossible happened. Spartacus defeated the Roman legions sent against him, not once, not twice, but 3 times. The rebels won great victories at the battles of the Silarus River, the Volsharnus River, and the Allia. Spartacus was unstoppable. Even the great general Crassus was no match for him. Spartacus was that good. He used guerrilla tactics, taking advantage of the element of surprise and attacking whenever and wherever he pleased. He used hit-and-run tactics, ambushing Roman supply lines, and forcing entire Roman legions to flee. And in doing so, he forced Crassus to abandon his plan to annihilate the rebels and settle for a long and bloody siege of the rebel stronghold at Ferzina. But this proved to be a terrible mistake. As punishment for stealing food, he was thrown into the gladiator arenas of Rome. But Spartacus did not fight to the death as expected. Instead, he survived and escaped. Now, armed with only a kitchen knife and a will to survive, he had to find a way out of the deadliest city in the world, Rome. It seemed like an impossible task. Yet Spartacus managed to do just that, and he did so by stealing a weapon, killing his first victim, and joining forces with other gladiators who were planning a jailbreak. Together, this ragtag band of warriors attacked a nearby armory, seized weapons, and freed more than 70 fellow slaves. And that was how, completely by accident, the First Thracian War began. Spartacus, though, knew that one jailbreak was not enough. If he truly wanted to secure his freedom, he needed more men, many more men. So, with his small army of 70 slaves, he set his sights on the nearby town of Capua, where a gladiator school trained slaves for the games. And there they found hundreds of men who were eager to join them and take arms against their oppressors. But Spartacus knew that he needed to convince these men that there was more to life than the brutality of the arena. And so he did something remarkable. In a show of defiance against Rome, he smashed his gladiator helmet. An act of courage that symbolized that there was another way to be free, to be more than just a tool of the brutal Roman Empire. But this was just the start. As the news of Spartacus's rebellion spread throughout Italy, thousands of slaves joined him, including former gladiators, prisoners. Now, if you've ever played the game Assassin's Creed Origins, then you'll know that this was a time of great upheaval in Egypt. At first, it seemed like an easy victory. After all, what could slaves possibly do against the might of Rome? You see, while Crassus was confident that he could defeat Spartacus in battle, he was less sure about breaking the will of the rebels to fight. And Spartacus was not done. He was going to march on Rome itself. When Spartacus heard about the battle, he was furious. While traveling to join his army, Spartacus and his men were ambushed by Roman cavalry. The story goes that Spartacus was hunted through the mountains of southern Italy by Roman soldiers. Yet despite the horrific way he died, Spartacus became a legend, a symbol of hope for slaves throughout the Roman world. So remember Spartacus, the nameless Thracian slave who became the most feared man in Rome, the slave who dared to dream of freedom and in doing so changed Rome forever.